Hello, my name is Glen. I'm a PhD student at the Australian National University, and it's my pleasure to be presenting our paper, A Scoping Study of Evaluation Practices for Responsible AI Tools, on behalf of my co-authors, Nitesh and Michael. So let me begin by outlining the motivation informing our paper. A wide range of responsible AI tools for addressing ethical issues during AI development have been produced, indeed many of them by the CHI community. Examples include software toolkits like FairLearn, designed to enable practitioners to assess and mitigate fairness issues during model development, and model cards and data sheets, which are templates for responsibly documenting machine learning model and dataset characteristics. Now, the full breadth of responsible AI tools, I'll refer to these as RAI tools from now on, is well documented elsewhere. But what we explore in our paper is the overarching objective that informs the development of these tools, and especially the question of how we can determine whether a given RAI tool is effective at meeting that objective. So generally speaking, we see the overarching objective of RAI tools as being to support AI practitioners to change AI development practices. The idea essentially is that without the support of bespoke tools, practitioners will be unable to develop AI systems that meet emerging expectations for responsibility, fairness, and so on. And so, as we outlined further in our paper, existing research highlights that supporting AI practitioners to change AI development practices is a challenging task. Our review of this research highlights three core challenges. First, AI development processes are complex, and designing tools that are usable within this context can be challenging. Second, organizational constraints can be barriers to widespread adoption and day-to-day use of responsible AI tools. And third, the specific goals of a given responsible AI tool might be at odds with the broader goals of the intended users of the tools. So for example, intended users might have a goal of training a model at the lowest cost, where a RAI tool might have the goal of enabling practitioners to identify inappropriate use cases for training data sets. And so given these three challenges, we argue that there are good reasons to be cautious about assuming that an RAI tool is likely to be effective at meaningfully changing AI development practices. And so this leads me to our research question and method. The research question we focus on in this paper is, what are existing practices for evaluating RAI tools as reported in publicly available documentation? Now, I've been using the phrase RAI tools informally so far, but for the purposes of our paper, we define these tools as interventions that support practitioners and stakeholders in addressing ethical issues in AI system development. And as we note in our paper, not all evaluations are necessarily reported in publicly available documents, but we think at the very least that evaluation practices researchers and practitioners elect to include in their publications is indicative of what aspects of evaluation are valued by the community. And so we see this as a good starting point for our scoping study. So we explore existing evaluation practices through a scoping review of 37 evaluations. Now, I realize there's a lot of content on the slide, so I'd encourage interested listeners to pause the video here or refer to our paper. But the key point I'm attempting to demonstrate with this diagram is that we undertook a substantial review of the literature to generate a long list of potential RAI tools, with each tool associated with at least one document, such as an academic publication where the tool was reported. We then screened this long list before undertaking breadth sampling. Now, this process of tool identification, screening, and breadth sampling resulted in us selecting 27 RAI tools to study, and each tool was associated with at least one document, some associated with multiple, which meant that our final corpus included 37 documents. Now, before talking about the findings from our thematic analysis of these documents, let me first provide a little bit more detail on the 27 RAI tools and their associated documents. So, the 27 tools included in our analysis span all stages of the AI pipeline, although, as you can see here, the bulk are intended to be used during the model testing phase. The tools included in our analysis are primarily software toolkits, although other types of tools included are transparency artifacts, tools or processes to support third-party reviews or audits of AI systems, and workshop guides. And lastly, although we did make an effort to include a breadth of tool creators, when balancing for the other factors I've outlined, we were left with a sample of tools that were mainly developed by industry actors. Now, as a final note, before I introduce the findings of our analysis, let me also just highlight the breadth of evaluation activities that are reported in the documents associated with the tools in our corpus. There are 2 points to make regarding this breadth. First, as you can see by the blue highlighting, the bulk of evaluations employ qualitative methods. For example, focus groups, interviews, think aloud, contextual inquiries. And whilst a range of evaluation activities is in itself problematic, it does mean that direct comparisons between evaluations are actually pretty challenging. So let us move on to the findings of our thematic analysis. So I'm going to highlight 3 aspects of existing evaluation practices. Please see our paper for further details. So the first is that existing evaluations focus on questions of tool usability. And so the needs of users are prioritized in the evaluation. For example, evaluators often note that users require tools that are easy to learn, and so evaluate whether a given RAI tool can be used as intended following a brief tutorial. And existing evaluations tend to focus on studying interactions between an individual user and a tool. So for example, a template for producing a transparency artifact might be evaluated by asking individual users to complete the template for a set of data sets. And finally, where existing evaluations do report metrics, these tend to be usability metrics. Now, in our paper, we argue that these practices, prioritizing user needs, focusing on individual tool interactions, and reporting usability metrics, demonstrate that existing evaluations unfold within a usability paradigm, whereby all aspects of RAI tool evaluation are designed to determine whether a tool is likely to be used as the designers intended by their intended user groups. But the problem we identify is that the objectives of RAI tools often extend beyond usability. This means that evaluations conducted within a usability paradigm might yield misleading results in terms of the effectiveness of an RAI tool at meeting its objectives. And so let me elaborate by reference to the 3 existing evaluation practices I've outlined. First, prioritizing user needs. This can be in tension with the aim of challenging existing ways of working. For example, users might want tools that are quick to use, whilst the aim of the tool itself might be to prompt users to slow down and engage in greater reflexive practices before making critical decisions during AI development. Second, using evaluation methods that involve individual users interacting with the tool can be in tension with the aim of intervening in collaborative AI development processes. An individual, for example, might be able to successfully use a data visualization tool to identify representation issues in a data set during an evaluation activity, but that same individual might struggle to communicate this insight to their team members or might have a hard time convincing their manager that the data set actually should not be used. And finally, usability metrics are important indicators for tool developers, but they're not necessarily useful proxies for measuring whether an RAI tool has been effective in terms of changes to AI development processes or AI system outcomes. Our point overall is that evaluating usability is an excellent starting point when developing an RAI tool. It makes sense given how important tool adoption is, but the overarching objectives of RAI tools actually extend well beyond usability, and so we need to complement usability evaluations with something more. And we argue that that something more is a focus on effectiveness. The problem with an exclusive focus on usability is that it obscures key questions about tool effectiveness. These are questions like, in what ways are user requirements preventing impactful use of a tool? And how will team dynamics impact tool use? And lastly, what organizational processes need to change to support responsible AI practices? Now, in our paper, we explore each of these questions in far greater detail, and we provide examples of how these questions might impact the effectiveness of an RAI tool. We also provide a much more nuanced account of the distinction between effectiveness and usability as guiding concepts for an evaluation. But for now, I'm just going to jump ahead to discuss the implications of our findings, in particular, to consider how we might support evaluators to develop new practices for the evaluations of RAI tools. I'll highlight 3 implications in particular, with each implication phrased as an open-ended question. So the first implication from our findings is that there is substantial scope to improve the validity of existing evaluation practices. I won't discuss this implication here, but please do see our paper for further details. The second implication is that beyond improving the validity of existing evaluations, we can also consider how the effectiveness of an RAI tool might be measured, as developing measures of effectiveness that can complement existing measures of usability is necessary to enable us to expand out of the usability evaluation paradigm. We note here that there are 2 particular challenges for developing measures of effective use. First is the challenge of measuring effectiveness at both a process level and at an outcome level. And so we want measures that address whether or not an RAI tool effectively changed how AI systems are developed, that's the process level, and also measures that address whether or not the AI systems developed are materially more responsible in some way, that's the outcome level. The second challenge is that we need to be able to compare the effectiveness of one RAI tool to another, which means needing a framework for applying measures consistently across the full breadth of RAI tools and intended users. The third implication, building on the need to develop effectiveness measures, is the need to consider how might the effectiveness of an RAI tool in a given context be evaluated. Here, we think effectiveness evaluations will have to grapple with moving in 2 directions. First, from individual practitioner unit of analysis evaluations to team-level analysis. And second, from single site to multi-site comparative studies. Now, in effect, this means developing a much more expanded toolbox of evaluation methods. And this in turn means grappling with how best to resource evaluations of RAI tools. And we discussed this further in our paper, but here I just want to note that we do recognize that one obstacle to the shifts in evaluation methods we're arguing for is that RAI tool development and evaluation, even when it occurs within industry settings, generally is highly resource constrained. And this point, that moving from a usability paradigm to an effectiveness evaluation paradigm will require the development of new effectiveness measures and new evaluation methods, and this in turn will require significant resourcing, leads me to these final slides where I'll now discuss our planned future work. And there are 2 questions in particular guiding this work. First is the question of how might the CHI community support effectiveness evaluations of RAI tools. We have a few ideas here, as you can see on the slide, but the main one I'll highlight in this talk is that we think the replica workshops at previous CHI are instructive. Because one way to incentivize effectiveness evaluations of RAI tools is to think about how the community at large can better value and recognize such evaluations as important research contributions in and of themselves. And second, how might participation in evaluations of RAI tools be expanded? Again, we explore this question further in our paper, but the point I want to highlight and finish on here is that defining effectiveness is inherently political. And this is especially true in the context of responsible AI tools, where effectiveness generally means that a tool enabled practitioners to better address an ethical concern and minimize negative impacts of an AI system. And so an important question to ask is, who ought to define effectiveness of an RAI tool? In particular, how can communities who might be subjected to or experience the negative impacts of an AI system, which RAI tools claim to address, contribute to defining effectiveness? And so on that rather large question, I'll finish up. Thank you so much for listening, and please do reach out if you have any questions or feedback.